Hello and welcome to another episode of Massalia Tales. On the last episode we saw a coalition of the Pictones and the Averni crush Zenon's army. The Daemons of Polymus were finally defeated and completely wiped out, meaning Massalia is now in danger. I'm rushing to get new forces together under the command of our other general, Zenon. Luckily, the Celtiberian Confederation is now on the warpath against the Averni, buying us some time. The Averni are going to be distracted by this invasion, so we're safe for now, it seems. However, in the east, our Roman allies have been replaced by some of the eastern tribes, plus the Carthaginians appear to be campaigning towards us, taking over parts of Italy and then moving into Janua, highly suspicious. At the same time, the Celtic Confederation resumed their offensive against us, moving some forces to attack Janua. According to the balance bar, the battle was not looking good. However, we did manage to lock the enemy down in a series of choke points and eventually just grind them against our untiring hoplite phalanxes, leading to a victory. Now let's continue. Now without a campaigning army, the safety of Massalia fell into the hands of the council's pocket commander, Zenon. He was a man without experience, but with aptitude to command greater than Zenon had shown when he was first commissioned. But there were no assumptions that he would ever achieve anything similar. That honour was assumed to fall to Zenon's closest ally in the Massalian assembly, who was running to fill Zenon's vacant spot on the council. His name was Eusebios, a man without military pedigree but a tacit recommendation from a dead hero. That was enough to make him the heir to a lofty name with lofty responsibilities. So we've just defeated the Celtic Confederation at Janua. Let's have a look at the battle results. We can see their reinforcement army is deleted, so we know it was entirely destroyed. Their leading army lost the majority of its forces too, whereas our forces lost pretty much nothing, under 100 casualties, earning these guys a heroic victory. Just a few enemies left alive in the leading regiment of the mountain men, and a few of them were captured. I decided I'm going to enslave the few guys that I did take captive, send them back to Massalia to do some good. Now I thought Janua would surely be safe now that the Celtic Confederation had failed to take it and the Carthaginians didn't attack it, but the Rhaeti are also on the warpath. They bring some forces up to attack the settlement, fewer men than the Celtic Confederation did, but the balance bar still really far in their favour. This is because the troops they have brought are pretty high tier, pretty much the best spearmen that barbarians can field, and they're upgraded. So not a completely trivial force, but I can just use the exact same tactic I used with the Celtic Confederation, bottling up the bottlenecks of the town and simply bombarding the enemy with arrows once they're locked in combat to kill their best troops, and then hopefully finishing off the rest just in regular melee combat. So here they come, they're leading with some medium swords, nothing too much to worry about there. But here are their main line regiments of spears, and you can see these guys are actually wearing some of the same equipment that my hoplites are. These are essentially the barbarian version of hoplites, very heavy spearmen who fight in a Greek style, but they're slightly weaker than regular hoplites units. But then again, we only have militia hoplites for the most part. So actually the sides are well matched. Here are my best units, the Greek garrison hoplites, who are going to receive the enemy's hoplites. They just kind of march up and then stand in front of us as some of the enemy's heavy swordsmen push through to begin the battle. Once the two lines engage, it's going to be a very orderly affair. Both phalanxes are very tightly packed and not really willing to move very far once in combat. So we're both going to just stand there and poke at each other, whilst my archers behind the line are going to rain arrows down on the enemy's phalanx, which slowly but surely will destroy them. On the northwestern approach, they attacked with just one phalanx. I'm going to outflank it with 3 regiments of citizen militia. So my guys are inferior to the enemy in melee, but once I'm in a hoplite phalanx, my defense is so high that it'll take the enemy absolutely ages to win out against me. So being behind them at the same time will damage their morale so much that they'll rout before they can kill me. We can see here that the enemy's medium swords tried to go around to get into the town from the back, but I have 2 squads of citizen hoplite militia holding them up. Now these enemy swords aren't actually very good, they're actually being defeated by my militiamen, gradually cutting them down. So that was excellent news. Back on the northwestern approach, I've surrounded that one hoplite phalanx coming at me with all of my citizen militia attacking me from the back. Of course, as I said, not really actually killing them, so the enemy are being demoralized by being attacked in the rear, but they're not losing any troops. But neither am I. You can see pretty much both sides are just poking each other with their spears. Some very unaggressive combat from these two phalanxes, pretty much just locking each other in place and doing nothing. The enemy's medium swords take a charge to the rear from my Greek armed citizens. They're not very powerful though, and the enemy withstand the charge. It doesn't cause them to rout, and my guys probably aren't really going to kill any of them either. So we've got the enemy's morale low, but not quite low enough. However, because they are taking casualties against my actual spearmen, they will rout soon enough. Now back over on the western approach, you can see that the enemy's phalanxes have been heavily depleted. They're down to half strength, whereas mine are holding up quite well, barely taking any losses. This is purely down to the fact that my archers are providing support here. The archers are getting the majority of the kills, and similar to the battle with the Celtic Confederation, the archer regiments are getting 100-200 kills by just standing at really close range and firing into the enemy's heavy units. So all that my garrison hoplites here are really doing is just keeping the enemy standing still, so they'll get hit by more arrows. The enemy do have some very heavy swordsmen led by their general, also engaging the hoplites. They're more dangerous, more able to defeat my men, but the same is true the other way around. Since they don't have a phalanx, they don't have as high defense stats, so I actually have a chance of defeating them in regular melee combat. Now those forces who were fighting the enemy's medium swords were freed up as the medium swords routed soon after, and I brought them all the way around to come and join this engagement, which is still going on. But at this point I'm pretty much running out of arrows, so I need to actually use flanking tactics to try and demoralise the enemy. Hopefully they've already lost enough men to make it possible to demoralise them. And you can see here, the enemy's general swordsman did hold out for quite a while. The phalanxes left before then. But by this point they're super outnumbered. My guys are charging forwards and just killing them. It's impossible for the enemy to rout because they're so surrounded. Their men are simply being wiped out in this situation. The guys on the northwestern approach just routed as well with the death of their general, leading to a decisive victory without having to come up with a way to defeat them. Very good news. So just like we held off the Celtic Confederation, we've held off the Rhaeti. Janua has won 2 battles in quick succession. Twice in recent weeks have the people of Janua taken up arms to resist the return to barbarism. Twice have they shed blood in order to keep their right to pay their taxes to Massalia. And what are they getting in return for this noble sacrifice? Only reports that the Massalian army is under strength and the city overfed. They will doubtless wonder whether it is really worth sending us that tax money after all. I know it is outside the current realm of military plausibility, but I speak on this issue to raise the idea that we send Master Zenon with the Police Guard to aid Janua until the region is secured. We owe them so much more than this already. So that's the Rhaeti invasion force dealt with, pretty easy. We actually lost more men than we did against the Celtic Confederation just because the enemy's infantry were better. We actually took out some of our guys in the melee, but still the same result, a victory that means Janua is safe once again. I had the question of what to do with the captives. Some of their more powerful units had quite a few captives, and I was wondering if letting them go could be a problem, but I decided to do it just to try and get some diplomatic points with the Rhaeti, because I really want peace with them, although at this point I'm thinking releasing captives doesn't really make a significant difference anyway. Now I was planning on sending Zenon to go and put his troops next to Janua just to defend it against attacks like that, which might come again, and I'm almost sure will come again, but he's been sabotaged, so he can't move any of his troops, or at least not in this term. Instead I'm going to have to just sit here and begin increasing the size of my army, a very important move, especially because the Arverni might show up at any moment with a big stack, so I do need a large stack of troops of my own. I'm going to have to get rid of all the money I'm making at the moment not supporting any troops to make that happen. You can see that Burdigala is still under siege from the Celt-Iberian Confederation. Hopefully they'll take it soon, which will relieve the pressure on Tolosta's western front. Now, taking the advice of some of the commenters from ages ago actually, I'm going to finally start recruiting a navy. I'm going to get some ships together. The plan is to send these guys far to the east, back to the Hellenic world in the eastern Mediterranean, to see if any of the Hellenic clans are still alive. If I can get trade with some of these guys, that will be a nice boost to my income, so that's the main objective. So I'm sending these guys out, Pythias' navigators, just a single ship. I thought that might not be enough, so before I leave I'm going to recruit a couple of small boats just to escort Admiral Karpos on his quest to the east. There could of course be some Celtic Confederation boats lying around, which I have seen recently moving around near Massalia, so I don't want to get my Admiral ambushed. Here is Karpos on the character report. You can see he's a confident man, a born leader, and has a personal tutor to improve his abilities, plus a well-connected wife also improving his abilities. Overall, a pretty good-looking general, well, an admiral at the moment anyway, only 17 years old as well. Here is Zenon, in case you're interested. You can see he's not looking too good. He's got a brutal wife and a coin forger, pretty underhanded, but he's actually a pretty good politician apparently. So he's good as a guy to govern our city. We can also see that the ruling council has massive influence over politics in Massalia, meaning that we're not really very close to civil war. Things are pretty stable in our home territories, which is good news of course. Moving on, the Carthaginians move up more forces to stand next to Janua, even more suspicious. It seems like they aren't going to attack because surely they would have done it by now, but what are they doing? That's the question that remains. I guess we'll have to wait to find out. The Rhaeti are continuing their attacks with their agents against our guys back in Massalia. This is something that's been going on for a while and it's not going to stop. Their agents keep leveling up and they keep causing mischief for my armies back near the city. We also see here the Sequani main force has appeared once again at Mediolanum. It's on its way towards us, well apparently anyway. We get this very annoying blackmail message that Eusebios, one of our best officers or potential officers, is being blackmailed. It's so expensive to counter those rumours that we're going to have to stop, which is unfortunate. So here's Gelon's forces. You can see he is being harassed by multiple agents. He's lost half his movement points. He still has enough movement points to start walking towards Janua this turn. He can't get there though. But I decided not to bother because with the Carthaginians hanging around, I thought that putting Zenon over there might risk him being defeated entirely very rapidly if the Carthaginians were to turn on us. So instead, I'm going to take up a defensive posture, which will also allow me to regenerate some of the regiments that have been hit by disease recently. And I'm going to recruit some more guys, of course. Now Carpos is ready to begin his adventure east. I was considering putting him on double time, but I thought that for now, as I leave my home waters, I'm going to move normally just in case I encounter enemies, and I actually do encounter an enemy. It's a lone admiral of the Celtic Confederation. Don't know what he's doing out here, but this is a nice opportunity to take him out, so I'm going to quickly auto-resolve a naval engagement with him, and it's a nice victory. Looks like the Celtic Confederation admiral is going to the bottom of the ocean. Not really a very big hit to them, but still something at least. We did lose a few of our own troops. I decided I'd sneak back into friendly waters just to regenerate a few before I continue on. Here is Eusebios, who was mentioned earlier. He is the Agoranimus, the position that Zenon held. Basically, he is Zenon's successor, and I'm going to continue that idea by reinstating the legacy of the daemons of Polymus in Eusebius' name, just because he is one of the generals that has tons of bonuses, as we just saw there. So I can click here to reinstate the legacy. This means he will start a new army, which has the same army traditions as the daemons of Polymus, and they had a couple of bonuses, mostly to campaign movement range, who troops under his command will now inherit. I'm also going to continue the tradition of him fighting on foot with some Massalian royal hoplites, just like Zenon did. So hopefully he'll have a bright future. I can't give him any troops right now, but soon enough he'll start gathering forces and I can even give him some of Gelon's men. Now, in order to start combating these agents, I'm moving Fatina over to try and get rid of the spy first. I managed to wound him. The chance of actually killing either of the agents is very low because both of them are similar levels to Fatina herself. I need to get my spy back over from Berdegala Ifianasa, who's still just spying out over there in order to help out in this agent warfare. You can see that Berdegala has actually now fallen to the Celtiberian Confederation, which is of course excellent news. This should provide an ample distraction for the Arverni forces. Now, seeing this, I wanted to see whether the Arverni actually were on the way towards me or anything like that, so I decided to bring Ifianasa up slightly just to see what was going on. We can see the Pictonia's army is still just standing around after its battle against Zenon. It doesn't seem to be doing anything at all. Very weird. The Arverni don't have that many troops locally, and the troops that they do have are probably going to be distracted by the Celtiberians, as I said. So I feel pretty safe being at war with them and also pulling troops over to the east, as is my plan. So let's move on and see what happens. The Romans give me a very cheeky offer indeed. They're demanding military alliance and they want me to pay for the privilege, even though you can see that they're at war with pretty much everyone. And by the location of their icon, it looks like their last surviving men are just a few ships sitting off the coast of Illyria there. I reversed the deal and wanted to see if they would give me money because I was willing to be bought. There was a moderate chance of 1,000, so I'm going to submit that offer to them. They just come back with the offer of no money at all. I was wondering whether I actually should do this. I mean, what's the harm in just going into an alliance? They'll probably just die anyway, and that'll be the end of the deal. But then I noticed that they're at war with the Carthaginians, of course, and realised that going into an alliance with the Romans is only going to increase the chance that the Carthaginians are suddenly going to attack me, which could be disastrous. So I reject the deal. The Carthaginians just remain standing around in Janua, no idea what they're trying to do, and I really don't want to find out. Just standing around is perfect for me. That's better than attacking me. The Pictones army disappears back into its own territory, interesting to know, and the Rhaeti are continuing their annoying agent engagements, this time against Eusebios. Then the Sequani main force, which we spotted in Mediolanum, comes down to attack Janua. So Janua is once again the focus of our battles against our enemy forces. This time it's a more serious enemy army. They've got berserkers, they've got loads of those heavy spearmen who can also throw javelins, who I hate so much, and were principally responsible for the defeat of Zenon, and they've got some elite guerrilla archers who can fire while hidden. Overall, a pretty powerful looking force, but we managed to defeat some forces with a similar looking balance bar before. Perhaps we can do it again. Let's head down onto the battlefield and give it a go.
Who was it that spat in our ancestors when they offered peaceable trade? Who is it that deals in shadow and deceit to hoard the land's wealth for themselves? Who was it that terrorized our blood brothers with undeserved invasion and slavery? The answer stands before us, shivering like children in the winter's cold, barking like scared wolves cornered by the hunters, desperately wishing their deaths be swift. The death of these men will not be enough to punish the great crimes, nor will the loose change to be had and loot be enough to reward us, as we deserve. Beyond the bodies of our enemies lies Massalia, juicy, weak, and soon to be ours.
So on this very snowy day, the Sequani forces begin their advance on Janua. Janua yet again face an invading barbarian army, and I'm going to use a similar strategy to what I've done the last two times, blocking off the choke points using hoplite phalanxes, and then positioning my archers behind to fire over the top. I'm going to have the same overall plan as before, which is to just lock the enemy in place and then hit them with arrows, trying to get the arrows to take out their best forces. We can see I've got a really thick block of citizen militia blocking off this wide approach, which I think the enemy are going to use. A nice defensive line, and the archers are right behind them, ready to pick off the enemies as I planned. So all there is to do now is wait for the enemy to begin their attack. Luckily they didn't try to go around to the back or anything, they just come in right into the choke points where I expected they would, advancing under a ceiling of shields, which is going to reduce their damage from archers to begin with, but soon they'll be locked in combat with my men and the archers will start doing more and more damage. They have a good body of reserve spearmen at the back there, you can see, and here are their elite archers. Well, perhaps not elite, but better than mine at least. We're currently firing at pretty long range at my hoplite phalanx, which is a little bit problematic, because of course this means they have the same advantage as me, in that locking both sides in combat means they're going to get kills on me with their archers, just like I am going to get on them. And because my hoplite phalanxes have a weakness against missile fire, it could actually be worse for me than it is for them. Quite inconvenient. Now the enemy are attacking the wide eastern approach just like I expected, however they're using the dreaded tactic of keeping their heavy infantry behind to throw spears into our lines. The same thing we saw when Zenon was defeated in battle. The main cause of losses there was javelin fire from guys just standing behind the main fight. I didn't wish to see this happening again, so I'm going to move up on the enemy's exposed flank with my citizen hoplites to try and lock as many of these guys into close combat as I can. If the regiment is fighting with the unit, the rest of the men won't throw javelins. It's only when they're sitting at the back, not doing anything, that they're throwing javelins, reducing our numbers and morale, of course. So I managed to lock as many as I can in combat, but already my guys are suffering from flanking penalties, and because they've taken so many javelins already and taken heavy losses, their morale isn't so good, especially because they're only militia forces. There's a similar situation here for these armed citizenry who have taken massive arrow fire. I was moving them out to go and attack the enemy's bows and try and get them locked down in melee, but as they were on the way they got completely wiped out by the enemy's archers, who changed targets to them. Perhaps good, because at least they're not firing at my mainline infantry. Now some of those citizen militia are already falling back. Not good, means the guys who are fighting further up the line are going to be pretty exposed. Their numbers are dropping very rapidly because there were some units I couldn't lock down who are throwing spears at my men, and even if they can only manage to throw a couple of spears into my ranks and get 1 or 2 kills, it gives a morale shock because they're under missile fire, which they don't like, especially because they're also being attacked in the rear by berserkers, which is never a good thing. So I've now lost another regiment of those militia, and the survivors being cut down by javelins as they try and inch away. The two regiments left, are still pretty thick and pretty able to hold off that massive enemy column, so at least that's some good news. Now the enemy general is piling through his own men to come and get involved in the spear fight, a situation which is good for me because he might just get himself killed. The bad part of the situation is the enemy's archers have stopped firing at my mob now that they're all dead, and are now starting to fire into my more elite infantry, who of course will survive for a while because their health is quite high. The arrows will just slowly reduce their health. Once they're all on low health, a volley of arrows can do devastating damage, so that situation is not good. The longer this fight goes on for, the worse it's going to get for me, because my archers aren't as powerful and I don't have as many. I can't do the same thing back to them as well. The situation here on the east side is getting a little bit worse because the enemy of course now can simply outflank my line. Luckily they didn't go to attack my archers or move to attack those hoplites in the rear, a very generous move which buys me some time. Unfortunately, my best units, these garrison hoplites, are taking heavy javelin fire from some of the enemy's heavy infantry back there behind their general, plus they're taking a bit of arrow fire. You can see from the tooltip their numbers are starting to go down pretty rapidly actually, and because these guys fight very slowly, it takes a long time for them to work through an enemy unit. Losing men this fast is devastating. We can see we just lost 20 men in a few seconds, not the sort of thing that these guys are going to like to see, and this is ruining their morale, and over the course of the next few seconds they lose another 20 men to more javelin fire and more arrows coming over the houses, and that's going to cause them to rout, and of course they have my commanding officer. The routing of them is not going to look good. The rest of my army is now going to begin to panic. Plus they were my best fighting unit, which means the enemy's chances of getting through my little blockade there are going up and up. My own archers have been cut down by enemy archer fire, and they're not really willing to stick around to see how this fight goes. They are only a militia archer unit after all. So I'm losing units pretty rapidly now. The guys defending the eastern approach are about to break as well. They are well matched against the enemy's spears, however the enemy has two regiments of berserkers in here who of course massively outmatch these militiamen, and plus the constant rain of javelins from the guys behind them isn't helping either. So those regiments are beginning to be completely crushed, and they're barely getting any enemy kills either, which is not very nice. The enemy's remaining archers don't really have to do anything, you can see they're just standing around, a few of them still firing at me, the few units left that they actually have line of sight on anyway. Luckily they'll probably be killing some of their own men, but that's not going to be enough to turn the situation. My guys begin to rout, and that causes a chain rout across the rest of the remaining militia units. It's a decisive defeat for the forces defending Janua. This means Janua has now fallen into the hands of the Sequani. We didn't really defeat many of them either, which means the main question is, are they going to move on and attack Massalia right away? Well, we'll have to wait till next time to find out. Having spent most of his career in what was almost a policing role, it took some time for Zenon to get a grip on commanding an army in the field. During the year-long levy of forces, he saw daily instances of desertion, missing supplies and dead scouts, mostly at the hands of enterprising locals on the payroll of the Rhaeti tribe. But eventually an effective fighting force was mustered, a force comparable to the army that carried Zenon to great fame. And it was just in time, for the long-dormant Sequani had just conquered Janua and were marching for the city with a huge warband. And it wasn't just them descending on Provincia.